Caleb turned on the mixer and it hummed to life and its lights filled the podcast studio with an eerie glow. He then plugged the mixer cable into his laptop and commenced to open Audacity, but the program was slow to boot up and so he waited impatiently. The program loaded. Ash and Spencer joined Caleb to discuss Blood Meridian or The Evening Redness in the West by Cormac McCarthy. All three men were weary from the read and so their usual merriment was lost in the folds of bitter resentment for having wasted weeks of their life reading such an unpleasant book. Soon they would complain about McCarthy's basic yet unstructured writing style and how he forgoes quotations during dialogue for no apparent reason, and they would discuss how he writes scenes moment to moment, step by step, with little to no comma breaks in the sentences and how this muddles the reading experience. But first, they would introduce the podcast to the listeners. You are listening to the Drunken Writing Podcast. I'll do that for 20 minutes. I guess I should probably do that in Spanish because there's a lot of Spanish in this book. But I don't know how you say podcast in Spanish. Podcast. I don't know.
Podcast?
I don't think it's podcast. I think it is slightly podcast. It's a loan word. With me today, Spencer of the Guatemalan Gringo Church. And can you be a Guatemalan gringo?
Yeah.
But I think basically if you're...
Gringo is no one from Mexico. Like, if you're not
So that
Mexican,
works.
you're a gringo.
Yeah. Huh. Learned something today.
And I would almost assume you could almost take that to, like, if you're anything outside of the place that you're at. Like, even like we could, go to, like, England. Well, that wouldn't make sense because we look alike, but you know what I mean.
Just stop talking. There ain't no English gringos.
You didn't know.
I don't know what they'd do if you went over there, hey, you fucking gringo.
I say.
With the deep Nigel Thornberry baritone over there. From Parts Unknown, Mr. Ashley Hatter. You really, really loved Blood Meridian, so we had to have you on.
Oh, it's the greatest thing I've ever read.
So Blood Meridian is just a story about people getting killed. It's a Western that's an anti-Western by one Charlie McCarthy. His real name's not even
Wouldn't that make
Cormac.
it Eastern?
Eastern?
Yeah, the opposite of West is East, right?
So it'd be an
If
Eastern.
it's an anti-Western, it's totally an Eastern.
Well, that'd be set in Asia then.
Mm-hmm.
Or Russia. I want to see the Russian version of a Western.
Yeah,
This is like a day-to-day version of Russia. This is just like a trip down St. Petersburg on a Tuesday.
Well, you know what this reminded me of?
Pain.
The Wild West Road. The Wild West, the road. It's just, it really is just the road set in the Wild West. It's fucking dumb. Like, is his world just everything just bleak and awful and just the end of the... Because this is supposed to be set in the 1800s, and it's just violence and awful people. There's no good people in this book. There's no protagonist at all. It's all antagonist. And
what about the kid?
The kid's also an antagonist because he is a piece of shit too. I guess he's the better piece of shit, or I don't know. Elephant in the room.
Out of all the turds, this is the shiniest one.
He's the most brilliant and the best bouquet of turds. No. I will say this to address the elephant in the room. None of us finished this book.
No.
That's the first time that's ever happened. I haven't abandoned a book in... I don't even know if I've ever abandoned a book.
I mean, you guys read House of Leaves.
Yeah, we read House of Leaves cover to cover. I haven't even quit
painful.
Jerusalem, technically. I'm still reading that, just one page every month. The story of Blood Meridian is pretty simple. A kid...
The kid.
Who goes by the name The Kid from Tennessee. I don't know, he fights with his mom or something. And then he just goes, I'm fucking leaving. And then he goes and joins a gang, and they're a gang of scalpers, and they scalp people and fight Apache Indians. But then all of a sudden they decide, hey, you know what? We can get more scalps if we decide to also scalp innocent Indians and then innocent Mexicans. And then we just go on a pleasure cruise of murder. That's about it. There's a...
Which I think if I would have got to any part of that, I would have maybe enjoyed it. But, like, where I quit, I think they were just getting ready to, like, the kid and one other guy was, like, separated from the whole group. And I was just like, I don't know what's going on.
Well, what I didn't care, like, besides the writing style, we'll get to that last. Because that's the main reason why I would say most of us, if not all of us, did not read the book to completion was because of the writing style. But, for one, what I didn't like was the book was just violence for violence sake. It was just violence is violence and nothing more. that's that's what he was going for too, which is what's kind of perplexing. It's just supposed to show the human tendency for violence and how it doesn't have to have any meaning to it. And his writing style reflects that because, there's nonstop violence that goes throughout this book, but it's written in such a mundane way that it just shows that, oh, well, if you have this much violence, it becomes so commonplace that it just becomes mundane and it's nothing worth having a moment where you stay with that moment to reflect on it or anything. It's just, oh, babe, somebody got killed again. Oh, there's hooks going through the jaws of dead babies. That's normal. And it just, every fucking chapter was like that. It's like, oh my goodness, I hate it. I don't want that much violence if there's no point to the violence.
That's one thing I hate about reading nihilistic authors is came to the conclusion a while ago that nihilism is like the most infantile and immature philosophy that one can adapt for themselves. And because it's like, oh, there's no point to anything, anything goes because there's no point to. I'm like, okay, well, as soon as you get out of your goth scene kid, My Chemical Romance obsession, can we maybe have an actual conversation? But that's Cormac McCarthy is still putting on black eyeliner and listening to The Black Parade on repeat.
I wish that was on the back cover.
Just a picture of him with guy liner on.
Yeah.
That's when he's Charlie McCarthy. Cormac is his literary persona. Well, like you said about there being no point, the problem is from a writing perspective, when there's no point to the story, what's the point in reading the story? Because this ends, because you meet a character, the Judge Holden, and he's this... One, because everyone says he's, the baddest character in all of literature, and he's the most violent and crazy, but he's also sophisticated, and he knows French, and he draws, and he does all this shit. And I actually took a quote from the book. It's the only one I actually remember, but I still wrote it down here.
Because the quote's probably like 15,000 words long, probably.
No, I got the shortest one.
Commas.
Well, I just feel this sums up the Judge character. This was... I fucking don't even remember. I think that Toadvine guy Toadvine was his name. Was a guy with no ears. Was asking him. He was asking the Judge why he was drawing or something, because I think he was drawing animals that don't exist. But the quote here pretty much sums up the character. Whatever in creation exists without my knowledge exists without my consent. Which just kind of seems that he has to be in control of everything. And big spoiler here. He's a huge pedophile. Every town he goes, he's raping some kids. Which is just like another thing that's like, I don't want to read this. This is awful.
Yeah.
And then it ends with man rape.
Well,
supposedly.
It seems like he was just down for any rape. Any unconsensual sex.
Well, he knew the kid from when he was like a 14-year-old kid when he first met him. But then I think because the book ends with he meets him at a bar, the kid, when he's the man. And he's like, I don't know, 40-something. I don't know how old this Judge is. He's a giant 7-foot albino super jacked Woody Harrelson is what I picture. Like he's real buff or something. I don't know, but he's albino. He has no hair and he's white. And every time he does some raping, he always ends up dancing naked. Now, at the end of this book, he ends up having words with the kid in a bar. And then the kid goes to the outhouse or a fucking huge room. I couldn't get the picture. I skimmed. Like I said, we didn't read the book, but I did skim through the ending. We'll try. That's how I read this book, is skim it. But it's alluded to that he rapes the kid as a grown man, but you don't know, and you think, did he rape him to death? They find, like, people walk in after, to see the aftermath, but it's so horrifying. H.P. Lovecraft all of a sudden hops in. Yeah. It's so horrifying that there's no words to describe it. And then it just cuts to the Judge dancing naked in the bar, which is his rape move. He's like Leatherface with the chainsaw dance, except for his is he slaps his albino python around. Like, it's fucking gross.
Which you think even at that point he must have been getting sick and tired of writing his own story, because he spends the whole rest of the book detailing every bit of just everything. Yeah. But when it comes to the end, he's just like, he made a guy raped to death.
Maybe not. Like, that's a big hot point of contention, is nobody knows if that's how it ends. And there's all these essays and stuff written about, is this the true ending? And he has this big fucking monologue about dancing. I don't even know. I found it stupid.
Could you imagine if you went to college and you had like a writing or literary class and that was your assignment?
Was it about the road? Or, I mean, about Meridian?
Blood Meridian, or specifically about that end, about the man rape at the end. But like, come on, is this what I'm paying all this money for? Like,
Taking out thousands of dollars in student debt to talk about man rape? Okay.
Well, you're not seeing because I've watched some documentaries, quote unquote, about this book, and the thing is, you're not seeing the beauty in the violence, man. You're not seeing how violence is ugly but beautiful and part of the human spirit, man. And you're not seeing how man rape can be sexy and I don't know. That sounds like secure.
Ted Bundy said something similar, didn't he? Like,
most likely,
I love killing these people and dissecting these women and licking their insides, and I really see the beauty in this violence, but the violence also in beauty.
Dude.
Yes, this is
something Chuck Palahniuk would say.
Very, jerking off at the bottom of a pool.
Yeah, with your bum hole getting stuck to stuff. I don't want to talk about Haunted ever again. We talk about it enough anyway. We talked about it. It's popped up on a few lists already we did for Halloween. I don't want to ever talk about that again.
But dude, it has masseuses that kill through touch.
Stupid. Fucking dumb. Going back to Blood Meridian, because we don't want to talk about dumb things. We want to talk about fucking highfalutin society.
Intellectual dumb things.
Wonderfully written, beautiful books of violence and depravity.
You obviously don't understand the nuances of such high literature.
Go ahead, Spencer, your turn.
I can't do anything after that.
I like books with words, but not big words. If we want to break down the actual content of this book and the style-wise, now I actually like that he incorporated a lot of Spanish into this book until I got entirely bored with it, but I could see how some readers who don't want to read pages of Spanish would be turned off by that, especially since he writes Spanish in a way that I don't, because I'm not fluent in Spanish, so I don't know if, it's just the way actual Spanish speakers would speak, or if he's just making shit up, or he's going by Spanish fucking English dictionary. I don't know. But, the writing style, it seemed like you were saying earlier how he focuses on great detail, but it's on things that don't really matter. How I said, the landscape they're walking through in the desert of the Southwest, like Texas and Mexico, seemed like the road, because everything was so desolate and barren and just awful, and every fucking page, it seemed like that's what he was writing about in most detail was the scenery.
Well, we've talked about it off podcast just as we were trying to read this thing, that there have been multiple times where I've read a page and I got to the end of the page and I was just like, what happened? What? I have no idea what I just read.
Well, there was many times where I was kind of zoning out, and then I went back and I was reading, and I was like, wait, I read this whole page already. Yeah. I don't even remember what I read.
That thing you sent me in Messenger the other day about the block thing to help keep where you're reading.
Yeah, that might have helped.
That would have been useful for this book because I kept on getting lost in mid-read of a page. What doesn't help when a paragraph's 2.5 pages long
with no quotations or commas or anything. Also, and this is why this book is considered by many the greatest American novel by the greatest American author.
It's an old white guy?
Probably, pretty much.
When was it written?
80-something, 85 maybe. But
back in the days of cocaine.
Yeah, he wouldn't do cocaine. He only hangs out with scientists. He can't do cocaine.
He hangs out with scientists,
Mexican than cocaine and all that crossing the border.
Well, that would have made the book interesting if he was on cocaine when he wrote it.
I mean, look at Cujo.
Cujo!
Why this book is considered so great is because all the great literary references. It's supposed to be in the vein of Moby Dick. I didn't see it.
Because you skipped most of Moby Dick and went to the end. Yeah, I could see how that is.
I didn't care about the fish parts of Moby Dick. There was, what was it? There was a literary reference to John Milton's Paradise Lost, which I don't think I actually got to this part because I don't remember it. But there's a scene where they get to a volcano and they're being chased by Apaches and they're out of gunpowder. But because the judge is such a fucking intellectual, he just knows that if you piss on volcanic soil, it makes a cheap gunpowder. And somehow that's a huge reference to... I never read John Milton's Paradise Lost, so I don't know. But apparently that's a huge reference to that and everyone was loving it. And I think that book is about fucking devils or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it details the story of Lucifer being cast out of heaven and him trying to
piss on volcanoes.
Yeah, apparently, and thou hast been cast out of paradise and must piss upon volcanic dirt, creating gunpowder for Remington and all the other brands of rifles. Forever. Amen.
So you think with the judge being an albino, you think like the last place he would spend all of his time would be the desert?
I don't understand how. And he was like dressed to the gills too, wasn't he? All the time, like he was all
like all black. Wasn't
Yeah.
he? That's how. Anytime I saw a thing about him, he was like an all black.
And I could be making this up. Did he not sweat?
Yeah,
Maybe in his frenzy of raping.
Yeah,
fornicating.
that's when he works up the sweat.
I think there was supposed to be some big metaphor too about how his raping wasn't about sex or power. It was like something I forget what it was. I think it's in his big stupid monologue about dancing at the end. It's about
spiritual rape.
I don't fucking know.
It's like a Bob Ross experience. You know? It's about the joy of raping.
Just dab a little bit here, dab a little bit there.
There are no bad rapes. It's just happy little accidents.
Oh, sometimes it goes in and it was an accident. You just pull it back out. All right. I'm going to read this so the listeners will have, for those who have not read Blood Meridian, will have an idea of the writing style we're talking about. And then we'll each tell what we didn't like about the book or when or why we bailed the book. Bailed from reading the book. Also, this sucks. No. I don't fucking like it. This is where I bailed. I think I did read maybe a whole chapter after this, but I don't remember any of it. This is where I really fell out. Page 114, 115. I'm just going to, because it's one paragraph.
Oh, God.
That goes, I'm not going to read this beginning, but this is just one paragraph, so keep this in mind when I'm out of breath and wheezing. Because a lot of this is not commas. I want to read it how it's written. Oh, okay. I don't even know this guy's name. Also, I think they said this was McCarthy's last book where he used big words or like tried to use fancier words. Because I remember, like I said, I read The Road, and I actually liked The Road, just not really the writing style, though I did see how it fit. I thought he did that specifically for The Road. I didn't know that's how he, wrote. Yeah. But he didn't use like these ridiculous words that he uses in this book. Apparently, he's a real smart fella, and he likes to smell his own farts. Highfalutin fart smeller. Suddenly, Bathcat and one of the Delawares turned their horses and quartered them and called out, and the company turned and milled and began to line out down the lake bed toward the thin line of scrub that marked the shore. Men were leaping from their horses and hobbling them instantly with loops of rope ready made. By the time the animals were secured and they had thrown themselves on the ground under the creosote bushes with their weapons ready, the riders were beginning to appear far out on the lake bed, a thin frieze of mounted archers that trembled and veered in the rising heat. They crossed before the sun and vanished one by one and reappeared again, and they were black in the sun, and they rode out of that vanished sea like burnt phantoms with the legs of the animals kicking up the spume that was not real, and they were lost in the sun and lost in the lake, and they shimmered and slurred together and separated again, and they augmented by planes and lurid avatars and began to coalesce, and there began to appear above them in the dawn-broached sky a hellish likeness of their ranks riding huge and inverted, and the horses' legs incredibly elongate, trampling down the high thin cirrus, and the howling anti-warriors pendant from their mounts, immense and chimeric, and the high wild cries carrying that flat and barren pan like the cries of souls broke through some misweave in the weft of things into the world below. Fucking Christ! What is that?
That took you almost 2 minutes. I was watching the thing.
It's stupid. I did like the part about the phantoms, but that sentence, no joke, was like fucking 10 long, 20 long. I don't know how long that was. Most of that was one sentence. I don't like it.
Were you just throwing out numbers? It was 10 long. It was 100 long.
100 it was. 100.
100, damn it.
100 sentences it was long.
It was 1,000.
I would like to do, if I can, I didn't bookmark any of this. Okay. That's all Spanish. I'm not going to read that. It sounds stupid. I would like, because isn't there some, well, Ash, I remember we talked about this when we started the book, how he'll have a character speak a certain way, and literally even in mid-sentence, they speak a different way again. Like, it's not, like, fluid. It's not like their sentences really make sense for how they speak, because, okay, you're going to have accents or a certain speech patterns for someone, but then you break it in the same sentence or the same amount of dialogue.
You know what you should do for the people? You should pick a beginning of the chapter and just read all those things in the beginning of the chapter that tells you what the chapter's about.
Yeah, we'll do that. That's a good idea.
What were you going to say, Ashley?
I was going to say, like, Cormac, it's almost comical in that it seems like he forgets halfway through writing the person's dialogue, because it's like 10 pages long anyway.
Yeah, true.
That he's supposed to use a certain word in a certain way. Like, come over here, boy, and I do this, and would you be so kind as to come over here and look at the road? And I've been trying to get my mail the past 3. I'm like, God damn, man, just make up your mind.
It's very annoying.
Is he Jamaican? Is he from Brooklyn? Is he? I don't know. Is he a Guatemalan gringo? I don't know. Just come on.
Okay, so I just opened to chapter 12.
Okay.
So, like you said, every chapter starts, pretty much just fucking word salad. It tells you the whole chapter in individual words, like what's going on. So here's what chapter 12 has to tell us, what this chapter is going to be about. Crossing the borders, storms, ice and lightning, the slain Argonauts, the azimuth, rendezvous, councils of war, slaughters of the Galenos, death of Juan Miguel, the dead in the lake, the chief, an Apache child, on the desert, night fires, El Verote, a surgery, the judge takes a scalp, un hacenado, Gallegeo, Ciudad de Chihuahua City. So, fucking, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this, Cormac? What's the point of this in every fucking chapter?
Like he's trying to be like freaking. Well, if you go back and read like Oliver Twist and a bunch of old novels that were serialized, he would like Dickens and all them would write about what to expect. That way, with the particular intent that, people buying issue by issue could order it that way. They could be like, okay, well, I haven't read this one because this is detailing something I don't know about. It's like watching an old, TV show being like, on the previous episode, on the last episode. And so it kind of gives you that way of knowing what's in the chapter without having to go through the entire chapter. But yeah, I don't think Cormac McCarthy's pulling a Dickens.
Well, let me retort with Across the Prairie. No, okay, I'm not. That got very racist. The third one, I forgot. There's a lot of racist language. You open up with the N-word. All right, buddy. I'm not reading that on there. But that's what you know is going to be in the chat. I guess that could be a good for this. I thought, this is what's coming in the chapter. But when it came, I didn't even realize. Yeah. Like a woman with a man with a small penis. Like when it came, I didn't even realize it happened. It spurted off, and then I was like, oh wait, there was supposed to be some scalping here. Where was that at? And then I have to go back and reread. Oh man, this dialogue I don't think is very good either. I'm not going to read that. That's terrible. I want to find like the accented dialogue because that makes me happy.
It's like H.P. Lovecraft dialogue.
Yeah, but at least his was consistent. Like if he had a fucking mountain yokel that spoke a certain way, that person spoke that way throughout the whole story. Yeah. Not Cormac.
Over them mountains and...
As far as I could tell, the only consistent dialogue was the stupid judge. I think that's the only character he cared about.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like.
How do you guys feel about when a book has like 2 titles?
Like the fucking Blood Meridian or the Evening Redness in the West. I wish he would have went with the Evening Redness in the West because then it would have became as famous. Because now I'm like, that's a stupid name. I'm not reading that.
Yeah, Blood Meridian sounds very sexual.
Well, the whole Meridian thing, like, I forget what I was...
It was with the sky or something, like the
yeah, but it had, like, multiple meanings and something fucking beginnings and ends and circles, and I don't know. We both watched the same documentary, but we should have watched that before we did this, not months ago.
I don't know, because after watching a couple of those videos you sent me, I was still just like, I don't get it. I don't understand.
I watched a video that was 20 minutes long entitled, What is the Point of Blood Meridian? Followed up by a 20-minute long video of explaining the ending of Blood Meridian by the same person. And both videos, super detailed, a lot of description, very helpful. And I didn't understand anything. I still don't.
Well, then even the guy doing the video at times would just be like...
Could mean that.
But was also just like, he would explain things multiple times, or he would go and reference things from different parts of the book, and it was just still so utterly clusterfucked and confusing, and it was just still like, I don't get what's going on.
And what was the
point
of
going to the doctor with a hangnail and being like, Doctor, what's going on? And he just throws Grey's Anatomy at you. Well, let's start with the bladder and the gallbladder and talk about, we're going to bring in Freud, too. Did your father rape you at all?
Was there lupus involved?
My finger hurts, sir. Help my finger.
I don't know if you guys made it this far, but what was the fucking point of the juggler? Besides to annoy me?
I didn't make it that
The
far.
Spanish-speaking juggler that had no point. Well, his wife, I know, was important because she was a fortune teller, and she tells the fortune of one of the generals, and it's ominous, and he's gonna die, and then he dies. But the fucking juggler just juggling, and they're gonna shoot him, and then they're not gonna shoot him. I'm like, why are we doing this? Like,
It's
why do you
they're juggling their decision is what they're doing.
I just don't know why you would introduce characters that have little to no point to a story.
I just assume
that's the entire book, dude.
I just assume that he just introduces characters just so they can get scalped later.
I don't think
That's
they
what
got
it felt
scalped
like.
though. They might have. I don't fucking know. I don't know anything. I read that.
I've read so many reviews that touched on the whole, like, why did he introduce this character or any of the characters when he's just going to kill him like 2 pages later in a violent manner? And like, so many people were turned off by that. They're like, there's no point in memorizing character names or histories or anything like that. Just know that, hey, character XYZ enters and gets killed, and then character 5.2 enters, gets killed. And
Gotta
I was
do
like,
some
yeah,
murdering.
pretty much.
Well, it must go with this whole fucking philosophy of violence is just violence and it just happens. So people just come and go in your life without any reason. Because I feel like Cormac McCarthy's the kind of guy that doesn't have a lot of personal connections. So maybe people just come in his life and he just barely acknowledges them and then they're gone forever.
How many characters in this story had actual names?
Toadvine.
That's not a name, though. Well, that's the closest you have to
That's
a name.
just 2 ubiquitous nouns thrown together.
But there was
My name is Heel Toe.
But there wasn't like a Steve or like a Joe, or it was always like the kid or the judge or the juggler.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? There was nobody. So you don't even give your characters names.
Because it's such a violent world, you don't need to get attached to anybody. There needs to be no personality to these people, because if there were, you would care about them. And that's fucking dumb. You don't care about people because you're Cormac McCarthy. You're an old grizzled curmudgeon. Sorry. I would like
Feels
to
like
read
the opposite of hedonism, honestly. Like, hedonism's all about, taking pleasure in life and pursuing what feels good and all this stuff. The hedonists of ancient Greek, and then you had the nihilists of Germany, which, we all saw how that turned out. I don't know. I kind of like the hedonists a little better than the nihilists. At least we didn't get Nazis.
I'd rather eat grapes and have people rub me down, or even do the rubbing down, than extermination of mass amounts of people. I don't think the latter's very... It's just not a good way to live, because... Yeah. I would like to read just a random page, because this was one of the big action scenes early on that really hooked me into this book. I know it hooked you. I think this is when he fights Toadvine, actually. Did he fight Toadvine? Wow. Was that who that
in the mud pit thing?
Because you were like, who's Toadvine? And I was like, the main guy that he beat up or fought or got beat up by? I don't know. Yeah, they're in the mud.
Were they naked?
Could be. This scene too, just prefacing this, what the fuck were they on that they ended up in the mud? Was it wood over a hunk of mud, or was it a bridge? I have no idea. It was written in a way that I wasn't rereading and dissecting one scene of like, oh, why are they fighting in the mud? How did they get in the mud? I just know they were in the mud.
Well, I want to say that's like that literary group that we went and gave you a shit when you first started reading this, and was just like, and they was just like, you need to take your time to read. It shouldn't take me like 15 minutes to read a page.
No,
that's bad writing. Yeah. That's bad writing.
It shouldn't make me question everything either, especially when the kid's like at the very beginning of the book is like, oh, and I ran away from home because my mom didn't care about me and my dad didn't care about me and nobody cared. And I was shot through the chest and somebody took care of me. I was like, whoa, what? This is the Old West. And you were shot through the chest and survived and then just ran away from the woman that helped? What? How did you survive? Like,
it wasn't very fleshed out there. Yeah, he's
the kid.
Well, that's how little impact. That's the beginning of the book, and I completely forgot that happened until you mentioned it. I was like, when did he get fucking shot? Oh yeah, that's how it opens. He's fucking stupid.
My mom doesn't like me. I was shot, by the way.
Now, I will say this, because I'd like to think between the three of us, we've read some pretty fucking, higher up fiction or some more classic literature that wasn't haunted, like things that you have to take your time and really appreciate, and a lot of references and metaphors might go over your head. But this book, I just don't get. And there is, I've spoken to a lot of people now in the classic group, like from Tim from the comic shop. There's a lot of people who really like this book. So I don't want to just be like, oh, this book completely sucks. It just is, it's not for me. Like, maybe people just tend to read differently, where some are slower and can really absorb the material. The way I read, it just was not happening for me.
Blood Meridian seems like homework.
Yeah.
It seems like something
that's a good way of putting it.
That, like, probably something in like in a high school or college, a thing that you would read and take like a semester to dissect and go through everything.
Which is because I always talk about how fucking Finnegan's Wake is nonsense, but there's book groups that have spent 20, 30 years just on that one book. I think people who like to highlight passages, like to reflect on passages, like to really think of the meaning of what is going on, they would actually probably get a lot from this book. I don't have time for that.
I read for enjoyment.
I read for escapism and enjoyment, and if there happens to be things that I take away from the book that enrich my life, I am happy.
Yeah.
But Blood Meridian was just violence, and I don't really fucking care about old white guys in the West killing brown people. It's just not for me.
Which is saying something, because we both have read it. You know, I'm sure all of us have read or watched things and read things for violence just for violence sake. You know what I mean?
But they always have a point, usually. Like, look at any Quentin Tarantino movie. There's usually a point. Well, things that are at least decent. Like, I haven't watched something that was just violence for violence sake that, well, unless you're watching, like, horror splatter movies or something, but...
Oh, okay. So, like something with even a basic level moral or lesson or something like that, some basic level message. Because I was going to say, like, I've read Chuck Palahniuk's Fight Club, and then I saw the movie. The movie was better, by the way. And it just seemed like, obviously, he's railing against capitalism and the evils of blah, 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 and fatherless homes and all that stuff. So there are messages. They're just kind of pedantic. When you really look at it, they're like, okay, well, you could have spent 2 pages on this, but you decided to bring an entire novel. That's cool.
It's cool, man.
But, it's all good, man.
Whatever you want to do.
You just pull up a chair, man. You're all good here, man.
You made several $1 million from it, so who am I to say that it's not quality?
You just keep doing you, man. Yeah. It's all good.
I want to go back to the Toadvine fight. I want to read this for the folks because this is a perfect example of how the whole book goes, where no quotations, and just by glancing, I don't see any dialogue tags. There might be some thrown in here, but very minimal dialogue tags in the book too to also tell you who's speaking.
Well, I remember in the beginning, there used to be like a he said or then I said or stuff like that. But as it went on, it just stopped.
It might not stop. You might have just completely blanked out of it.
That's a fair point too.
All right. That's again, there's just like random parts of accents, but that's it. Like, he doesn't go full in, and he doesn't.
Taffy.
Yeah. No commitment.
That and cut. That'n's cut. Said one of several men standing along the walkway watching. Kill, slobbered the man, winding. Fucking stupid. Kill, slobbered the man waiting forward. No break, no comma, no dialogue tag. Well, I guess
dude,
slobbered the man.
You were still reading. No break, no dialogue. I was like, jeez.
I didn't remember that at all.
So, kill, slobbered the man waiting forward. So it would be kill, and then quotations, 2 commas, and then slobbered the man would be the dialogue tag. But he doesn't do any of that. It's just kill, slobbered the man waiting forward, which if you weren't a native English speaker and English was your second or third or fourth language and you read this, you'd be like, what the fuck? I don't know what that means.
Even as the first language, I'm still just kind of like, oh. I'm going to keep going and see if I get it.
Just stupid. But someone else...
forward, Spencer.
But someone else was coming down the lot. Great steady sucking sounds like a cow. He was carrying a huge shillelagh. He reached the kid. Why would he have a shillelagh in the Wild West? He was carrying a huge shillelagh. He reached the kid first, and when he swung with the club, the kid went face down in the mud. He'd have died if someone hadn't turned him over. Why wouldn't he just have a club? Why didn't you say club? Why you gotta say shillelagh? Like, what the fuck? Is he?
Motherfucker, I'm coming down to
There's no description of an Irish or Scottish or any kind of Gaelic man. It's just, but he has a shillelagh.
You smack my tint, you aren't getting away with that. The pride of my clan is at stake here.
When he woke, it was daylight and the rain had stopped, and he was looking up into the face of the man with long hair who was completely covered in mud. The man was saying something to him. What? Said the kid. I said, are you quits? Quits? Because if you want some more of me, you sure as hell gonna get it. He looked at the sky, very high, very small, a buzzard. That was it. That was the sentence. He looked at the sky, very high, very small, a buzzard. He looked at the man. Is my neck broke? He said. The man looked out over the lot and spat and looked at the boy again. Can you not get up? I don't know. I ain't tired. I know. And then ain't don't even got a fucking apostrophe. I never meant to break your neck. No, I meant to kill you. They ain't nobody done it yet. He clawed at the mud and pushed himself up. The man was sitting on the planks with his... See, they're on planks? Why are they on planks now? The man was sitting on the planks with his boots alongside. I said, they're in the fucking mud. They ain't nothing wrong with you, he said. The kid looked about that would suck to have to read this, like if you're doing an audiobook, because to know when to not do an accent, if you're doing an accent, because there's no fucking dialogue tags usually, and it just goes into more sentence. It's fucking atrocious. The kid looked about stiffly at the day. Where's my boots? He said. The man squinted at him. Flakes of dried mud fell from his face. I'm going to have to kill some son of a bitch if they ain't got my boots. Oh, fucking.
And I know it's the West, but did you guys notice we couldn't get more than a page or two without somebody spitting somewhere?
Lots of spitting.
A lot of spatting and spitting.
Spitting out their brown teeth.
That's a lot of moisture to give up.
In summation, I didn't care for Blood Meridian.
Is there anything positive you could grasp from what you read?
I thought some of the details, which I did not write down. If I knew I was going to hate this book, because I don't like marking up my books with markers. Yeah. If I knew I was going to not like this book, I would have just marked the shit out of it. Because I did like a lot of his... I was being sincere when I said I like that thing about the Phantoms. Yeah. Just not that it was a big run-on sentence, but the Phantoms and the sun and stuff. I liked a lot of his descriptions about the desert and stuff.
It just gets muddled in with everything.
It just shouldn't have been so overbearing. Those are the things, if you throw that into your work sporadically or, lightly here and there, it worked great. But when you're Cormac McCarthy and you spend a whole chapter describing the desert, I just feel like there's no real point to it. I mean, I get it. It's hot. It's shitty. There's fucking buzzards. I had to listen to that one guy's gross fucking... He had gangrene or something developing, but it just went on and on about his gross arm. Like, I don't fucking care. He's gonna die. I don't even know his name anymore. Like, this... I just didn't care. But other than that, the positives of this book, I don't know.
It has an ending.
It does. It doesn't, though.
It doesn't.
You didn't read the ending. There's just rape or no man rape, and the guy's dancing naked in the bar.
Which is saying something because,
I raped a man.
Because you said, it when the kid is, 40, so, how old does that make the judge?
That's what I was saying. Is he, 80 and he's raping still?
People to death. Not even raping, but raping to death.
People in the Wild West died at, 30. So how did he live that long? I guess a whole died of raping.
How does an 80-year-old overpower a 40-year-old to rape him in the butt anyway?
We don't know if there was butt raping. I would assume there was butt raping. There's no detail of the sexual assault. It's left vague because artistic reasons. What about you?
You can look out upon the horizon and see the blood-red sun rising over and the spots of gazelles jumping, and then one breaks his leg. I'm like, God damn it, man.
A speckled buzzard soars through the sky and then falls.
Shits upon a gazelle, which startles it. And
everybody
reminds
dies.
Me of my homeland back in Eastern Europe.
All right, Spencer, your turn. What did you dislike about the book? And then what did you... Because we're in a positive note, so what you liked about the book?
I just... like I said, the main thing I disliked about it is that it was... With all that stuff going on and all the super ultra violence, that I still found it extremely boring.
That's fair.
But I did take away from... And then this is just the thing also, too, I've talked about multiple times on just my writing style of needing to be more descriptive and describing things, and he would do a good job of that, but it was just way too much and too often.
Not Alan Moore level, but too much.
Yeah. And I think another thing that really hurt this book is we were talking about the paragraphs. You can't have paragraphs that long, because when you have paragraphs that long, I can't help but skim.
You can have paragraphs that long if it's not a run-on sentence.
But that's fair.
If it's fucking 2 periods in a 3-page paragraph, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If it, because I've read, but even when I read Dracula, there's some pages where it's just a dense page, but it's not so bad when there's action and there's things going on. Yeah. And somebody in that classic lit group, when I was talking about the no quotations being fucking very bothersome to me, they shared an example of a book they were reading I don't remember the name of it. But it was even more bizarre in that it would be one paragraph, multiple people speaking, no quotations, hardly any dialogue tags, but the way it was written was so well done that you knew everyone who was speaking and it actually flowed like you were sitting in on somebody's conversation.
Wasn't that one graveyard book you just read kind of like that?
Crane Achille by Martino Cayan was about dead people in the graveyard, and it had very odd ways. Like people would, because it was literally like if you're sitting in a graveyard and just dead people just randomly talking all around you. That's how it's written. And it has like weird dashes. A dash means it's a start of a new, like somebody starting a new sentence with a half dash. Like fucking end dash means that somebody is in the middle of a sentence. Like it was very bizarre. But again, now this was a translated version, not the original Irish. I can't speak on that. But it was written in such a way that you can, for the most part, follow because once you get everyone's speech pattern, everyone talks differently. So it's very easy to follow along. It's just the initial getting into it. But Cormac McCarthy just like, we're just going to have 2 pages of dialogue, no quotations, no dialogue tags. At some point, you're probably going to get lost in the mix. Hemingway did that too. Not with the no quotations, but he would just like 2 pages into a fucking somebody, 2 people having a conversation. You're like, wait, what? I don't know who's speaking anymore because you throw in like someone says something and then he'd have a little description or something and then he would like some narration and then they would say something else and no dialogue tag. You don't realize who was speaking at that point. You didn't know they went and took a double turn. Now you have it back. Because normally when you read something, you just assume he speaks, I speak, he speaks. Like that's not how it always goes. So that's why you need to have some dialogue tags unless you want to be a pedantic fuck. Okay, Ashley, so your turn. What do you, negative and positive?
Negative. I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to go with the community that absolutely loves this, and not to attack people, but the absolute the vitriol associated with the community that adores Blood Meridian.
If you don't like it, I've got that in my comment on that classic lit group. People were hammering me, and you have to finish it, and you have to reread it, and you have to reread it again. Like, Jesus.
Even the one guy was jerking enough to be like, you don't read good.
Yeah, he said, you must not read good. And I was like, okay, buddy. He's like, you must be bad at reading if you don't get this book. I'm like, okay, Mr. fucking macho small dick. Go on.
Yeah, so it's like the gatekeeping that is absolutely ridiculous. I think maybe I'd be more open to examining works like this, or when you guys are talking about the endless dialogue and no tags, I thought about William Gaddis, his book JR, which is nothing but dialogue, and you're not given dialogue tags. And it's all about like finances and all this stuff. It's like 700 pages. It's ridiculous. But, you talk to people that like that book and they're like, okay, yeah, I can understand why it's difficult to get in this. Let me give you some tips for understanding this. If you don't get at this, a lot of people don't like this aspect of it or blah, blah, blah. If the community surrounding this that just absolutely worshipped it was a little more amiable and understanding and more welcoming to people that are like, hey, I didn't get this and I think it's shit, rather than going, hey, you're an asshole and you need to be burned at the stake, or I need to scalp you and, take your babies and bash their heads against a rock. Like if they were like, okay, what didn't you like about it? Let me explain that to you because I've done research on this and this is how you should read it in this way and all that stuff. It'd be a lot more pleasant, I think. It would be a lot more...
It would at least make it more palatable,
Yeah, for sure. It'd be like, okay, well, I maybe at the end of it, after reading it a second time, after exposure to this community, I still don't like it. But maybe I don't hate it as much. Maybe I can appreciate more about it. Maybe I understand more about it.
You'd kind of understand why maybe you don't like it, but why they might like it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, this goes along the works of like James Joyce and those type of like the intellectual, college type of people, like the university professors, and they have the book clubs and stuff, and they like to discuss these kinds of works because it makes them feel superior to us, lower unsophisticated
folks.
Yeah, us peasants, we like pulp fiction type of books. We're fucking unsophisticated losers.
I like comic books.
I like books with pictures.
They're nice.
Like, that's the biggest turnoff, like Ash was saying, with these gatekeepers, because that's what I encountered when I made the initial post about it. And I didn't say anything overly negative. I was just like, I'm having trouble getting into this book with, like, the way, the writing style. I'm not a fan of Cormac McCarthy's writing style.
And that was just only, like, your first, like, couple chapters in. Like, you were just saying, like, hey, I'm having difficulties.
And you would have thought that I was just straight up like, anyone who likes Cormac McCarthy or his work is a fucking asshole, and I hope they get butthole cancer. Like, that's the way they reacted to it. I'm like, this is unnecessary. And it's very strange, too, because this seemed like a very gendered topic, which I did not expect. I mean, this kind of story probably would be tended to be more read by men, I would imagine. But in that group, like, because there's a lot of women who read that stuff too in that group, which is why I like that group, because they read anything too. But most women did not like the book, and most of the men that commented were die-hard fans of this book. And it was just like a very strange contrast, because like it makes you think, like, is it because of the over-top violence? And maybe these men, like how the movie Logan was, a lot of women did not like that movie, but they could not relate to that movie because they're not going through the kind of issues that, like Wolverine in that movie would go through, because it was directed towards men. But this book, it sucks, but it just, this book is definitely directed towards, like, men, and I wish that the people in that group would have allowed the women to speak, so, because a lot of them, like, when they would share their opinions on the book, I didn't like this book for this reason, it was instant shutdown. It was these fucking gatekeeping, middle-aged white dude, fucking university fucking assholes who that's all they could talk about is James Joyce and, how great Ulysses is, even though half of that doesn't make sense. And they're just going on and on about, you didn't get it because you have a small brain, and it's like, all right. And then if you're a guy who didn't like the book, you're lumped in with that. Like, apparently it makes you feminine and less macho.
Well, you can definitely tell, I don't think McCarthy would even know how to write a story that females would maybe find enjoyable. I just don't think he would have that mindset. Like,
Well, I never read his Border trilogy. I only read The Road and half of this, so I don't know, I would assume the Border trilogy doesn't have that. No Country for Old Men in the title. Yeah. And was his other big one? Fucking, I don't care. But I don't think he's written any stories that deal with women very much. I wish we would have. I'm gonna say this on record. I wish we would have fucking what's his name now? Either like John Updike or who's the other military dude? Well, for the podcast, we should have read.
Clancy?
No. He's literary.
Are you talking like class? Oh, okay.
I think he's still alive. He was on the Gilmore Girls, actually.
I don't have experience with that.
Why can't I fucking remember his name? You guys talk amongst yourself. I'm gonna look him up real quick because I wanted to read his work for a while now.
A positive I liked about the book. I'm trying to choose topics that are a little different than you guys. I liked that there were potential layers. I'm not going to say there were genuine layers of intrigue and investigation that you find within the writing. However, the potential for that to be in there was interesting because I do enjoy reading poetry, classical poetry and stuff like that. And when you're reading poetry, there's an initial attraction, there's an initial understanding that you can get from it. But then upon rereading it, you can actually begin dissecting different aspects about it and be like, oh, well, this actually means this, or, based on what I know about this author's biography or what was going on in the world at the time, I can understand this about it as well. And that gives you a greater appreciation for that shallow understanding that you had at the beginning. And it seems like this book has that potential for deeper investigation. Can't say that I really got it, but the fact that it potentially could be there is interesting, and I can appreciate that.
I think the problem is with deeper investigation for me is I just don't want to.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do the initial investigation. Because I could see, I definitely see like the symbolism trying to pop through. I just don't want to dig for it. I guess like those people in that group said, you really need to take your time and, let this develop for you and really try to, research what you're reading. And it's like, yeah, but I just don't.
I got other shit to read, man.
I got cooler shit to read. By the way, Norman Mailer, was who I was thinking of.
Hello?
Hello? Hola, hola, señor. ¿Cómo estás?
Hey, there you are.
Yes. Norman
Like that,
Mailer.
I was like, man, he must be going on a racist tirade and just didn't want me to hear it.
Mute. Norman Mailer was who I was talking about.
Oh, yeah, the mailer of Normans.
The mailman. I just he ain't the mailman. But
he ain't no Kyle Malone.
But I don't know much about Norman Mailer's work, but we talk about like the kind of manlier fiction. I would imagine Norman Mailer would fit that description. But anyway,
well, what's your definition of manlier fiction? Is it like traditional masculine perceived roles like war and all that stuff, or is it because you could look at a bunch of like detective novels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s that appealed to men, but now would appeal more to the women of the 2020s because of the femme fatales and the romance and the potential relationship between the two and all that stuff. So what is your categorization for more masculine literature?
Well, I've always kind of split it in two, where you have the classic Jack London, Hemingway, the kind of adventurous, over manly type of macho, that kind of stuff.
I would say, do you take the actual writer in consider it, but into that too? Because like a lot of those people you mentioned are also very manly, like.
Yeah, I guess you could, but my second part, which is actually what I gravitate towards more, because I do like a good adventure story and stuff, but what I gravitate towards more would be like what Hemingway would consider more of a feminine kind of guy. I would be like the Fitzgeralds, the H.P. Lovecrafts, the Edgar Allan Poes, the more intellectual type of people, like the people who, when they wrote, it was more about the metaphors and the substance of the story and the development of the characters and emotions, not necessarily big actions. Because a lot of people think of manly literature, they think of big actions. They think of, like you said, war stories and action stories, and I'm going climbing mountains and shit. Yeah, that's fun, but to me that doesn't... Space war stories? You know what, Spencer? That's too manly. Too manly. Though I would prefer like a nice blending. Yeah. Because I don't think there's anything wrong with classic masculinity to a degree. If you're, smacking dames and having to make you sandwiches, well, you're a fucking piece of shit. But, but also, what was that movie? Not Bewitched. The one with Brendan Fraser where he gets the wishes from the devil played.
Something like.
Started with the B.
Bedazzled or something?
Bedazzled. I was going to say Bedazzled, but I don't think that's.
It's got that one hot woman that never ages.
Elizabeth Hurley.
Elizabeth Hurley, that's it.
Regardless of the name of that movie, it's a funny movie. The one part of it, he becomes a basketball player. I think that's when it was, and he's like too macho. He had a small wiener though, but he was like too macho and dumb and stuff. But then his next wish is, I want to be the most sensitive man in the world. He just becomes this big bloody vagina of a man, and then his girlfriend ends up leading him for beach bullies, like these fucking studs on the beach. And that's what I always think of. You don't want to go too far, because I could see how a Fitzgerald in his time would stand out like a sore thumb. Where you're like, all right, this guy, like, you're writing about all this romantic stuff. When are you gonna kill an elk? Like, like I can see Hemingway wanting to fucking, bop him one. But
let me stab a bull in the vagina.
Oh, that's. Wait, no, I don't think bulls have vaginas, man. Well, in 2021, they might. I don't know.
They might.
But we're all going to be standing in line for opening day for when the movie comes out, right?
Starring Matthew McConaughey. Is he starring in it? I don't remember. Christian Bale.
Wait, Christian Bale's in it.
The Blood Meridian movie, because I said, I wish there was a Blood Meridian movie I could just watch instead of finish reading this book, and then I understand. Spencer's like, well, I just saw a trailer for it. Turns out they've been trying to make it for 10 years now, and I watched the trailer, and I didn't make it through the trailer. It was so fucking boring! It was so boring. I couldn't make it through the trailer.
To make a movie about something that doesn't have a story. It's like, isn't that more of a documentary at that point?
I don't know, but I know there's not going to be enough rape in it for my liking. Because that book was, the only good part was all the fucking horrible, disgusting raping. And I don't see that happening. I don't see how you can end the movie on man rape. I mean, I guess you could, because it's not shown. It's just alluded to.
Yeah, just alluded to.
So, to those listeners who stuck around this far, I don't know how you did it, and who reached out and said, I hope you guys finish this book. We did not. I'm sorry. I apologize. I hope we at least broke it down and explained the reasons why we didn't care for the book, and no hate towards you if you do like the book, because I could see a certain kind of person liking this book, not just because it's violent and stuff like that, because, as we discussed, the violence is mundane. It's, like, almost boring, which is one reason I didn't like it. You have violence. Like, The Road had a lot of violence and cannibals and stuff, but it was like, you know, those would be focal points of the story. There was no focal points of the story with the violence. It was just something day to day, everything keeps happening, and you're just like, why am I going through this?
It's like background dressing.
It's like watching videos of the Holocaust. Like, if they had fucking recordings of it, you're just like, this is awful. Why am I watching this? And there's like no resolution. It's just like, nope, this is just what was happening at the time. Why do I fucking want to see that? That's awful. I want to see somebody rise from the ashes. You know, I want to see, you know, that's why any Holocaust movie, you see, there's always like a story about the actual people. It's not just, oh, they're just dying and there's these people that are fucking in control.
Hogan's Heroes.
Hogan's Heroes. Bob Crane got beat to death. Speaking of violence, didn't he get beat to death for shooting a gay porn or something? I know very little of Hogan's Heroes. I don't know why I'm bringing that up. Because we're talking violence.
The violence, it would be like if you were promised a book about intrigue and all this stuff, and it was like the most insane thing that Stephen King has ever wrote. But all he does is go through the entire book writing about a character going to a store and detailing everything that he did in the grocery store and how long it took to check out and bag all of his groceries and take it home and like put everything. You'd be like, when the hell is the good stuff coming? Come on, Stevie.
Well, here's what you're missing. He doesn't end up going home and putting those groceries away. He goes to load them in his car, and you see a man walk by with a gun and say, I want your groceries, boy, or else you get in the dick. And then it just ends to that gunman dancing naked in the street, and you don't know if he was robbed. You don't know if his groceries ever made it home. I will say this. This book would be like if you made a movie of the Titanic, but all you did was show the Titanic going down and people drowning. Yeah, for an hour.
He just showed people freezing and drowning to death.
You didn't have any real like you show the guy getting his ticket, getting on the Titanic, and then you just go through watching him from a distance as he goes through the Titanic, and they say, "Hey, you dirty Irish boy, you go in the basement of this big old boat, you go down below." He's like, "All right." And then everybody's doing a dance, and then the boat sinks and they all die. And you're just like, oh, that was fucking awful. Why did I watch that?
I like that you actually brought that up as the distance, is because without actual names or getting invested in anyone, there's such a distance to where you're looking at every single character and everything in here. You're not invested because no one's an actual person. Everyone's like either a caricature or they're just like cardboard cutouts. And you're just like, I don't care what happened. Like, can I get invested somehow, please?
There's no connection to the reader. There's no real reason to care what's happening. It's you're just an observer, and I don't like stories like that. And I would hardly call that a story, honestly, because if you're just watching something from a distance and you're not involved, it doesn't really matter, does it? Like, is it important? Is any of this what happens in Blood Meridian really important? Because usually a good story, you feel like there's stakes involved. You're watching or reading something and you're like, oh man, if this character dies, the fucking world's gonna, there's gonna be a nuke that gets launched or something. Like, you have reason to care. But in this story, if the kid dies at any point in the story, it doesn't matter. You don't care. If the judge dies or lives or rapes, you don't care. And whoever his victims are, it doesn't matter. They don't have names. You don't know them. They could be cows for all you care. It's pointless. And that's not the kind of stories I like to read. Like, I couldn't take anything away from this book that I would want to incorporate into my own writing, my own storytelling, or even recommend somebody else check out. It had no benefit to me whatsoever. And that's very disappointing because even House of Leaves, I took things away from that I enjoyed. And that's saying something.
This episode of Drunken Pen Writing brought to you by Nihilism. Because who gives a fuck?
I liked Haunted more than this book. Because Haunted, whereas I hated the story, didn't like any of the characters, thought it was gross for gross sake, I like the way he did a short story collection as an overall narration and made it almost like a novel, even though it's technically just a short story collection. I took away something from that. Man. I thought, hey, I can incorporate this into my own writing. Hey, these details, while disgusting, are at least kind of cool. They're well done. Chuck, this fucking Blood Meridian is none of that. I didn't care. Didn't care. That's the big takeaway from this. Didn't care. That's why I stopped reading it, because I just didn't. I was reading it and I was just like, I'm only reading this for the podcast at this point. I don't care. I don't want to read this. I want to read something else.
I've already almost read 2 books since stopping reading that.
Oh, even Jerusalem, where I have trouble. My problem is just the length of that fucking book so far. It's just, and the over, like, I was like, why is this going on? Like, what's the point of this? But at least there's a story there. This just didn't have any story, no personal connections, and no, sir, I didn't like it. I give it, and only because we can't do, you know what? No. This is our shot recommendations, right?
Yeah.
DPW, we do whiskey shots. We don't do 5 stars, 1 to 5 stars. We do 1 to 5 whiskey shots. I give this Stone Cold Sober 0.
Oh,
0.
Damn.
I'm sober. I didn't drink a drop. What do you give it, Spencer?
Ooh, like a 1.
So you did a shot just to get through the book?
Man, yeah. Just to get the taste out of my mouth.
Okay. What about you, Ashley?
I'm going to go with 0. The 2021 has been a year of first, like, we had the first 0 rated book review, and now we have the
You read some
rated
absolute dog shit books, it sounded like the last couple. Every time I'm like, hey, what do you read? And he's like, horse shit. I'm like, what the fuck, guy?
And more power to you, sir, so none of us have to do it.
I've actually, this was in the middle of me reading a whole bunch of great novels, so I don't, that's why it really caught. If I was reading a bunch of dog shit novels and I came across this, it would just be a part of the pile.
Yeah.
Like, it'd just be festering and turning white in the sun. I don't really care. But Ashley, that's where he's at. He probably didn't care because he's reading a bunch of dog shit, but I was reading good stuff, and I stopped reading good stuff to read this, and I was like, ah.
Now, my wife told me to stop reading it because she was tired of hearing me bitch about it. So I was like, okay, honey.
You know what? Even though we need to end this because it's over an hour long here, this book, and that's without a cold open.
I was saying, wasn't we supposed to have some business at the end?
No, that was going to be off air.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be off air. Maybe we'll have it on air.
Sexy.
Anyway, what I was going to say is one final takeaway from this book. We need many more.
Final takeaway.
I could see this book making people depressed, like literally affecting their mental health, because I could see if you're reading this kind of stuff and you actually are, more invested than we were, like if you're one of those people that really get involved in your fiction, this probably, if you have mental health issues of any kind, this would not be a good book for you. I could see this causing some problems. So, we can't personally recommend Blood Meridian, but this is, I will say, one of those books where I would say read it. Just because I don't know you, so you might actually...
Don't finish it if you don't want to, but at least try it.
Go to the library and get a copy.
Yeah, go the whole line.
Go to the library.
Make it up like halfway, maybe.
That, or see if you can get like a sample on your Kindle or something like that, just to give it a shot to see.
That's why I wanted to make sure I read a variety of parts of the book, just so people can get a feeling. But yeah, you have to read it for yourself, because even though I drone very monotonously on, that's how the book's written. It's very monotonous and boring.
Yes, it is.
Every fucking sentence is like that. Every single sentence.
Yeah, because like how you read it, like bland and dryly, that's how it's written.
Yeah.
Like, there's hardly ever any like explanation, like, like things to make you like, this guy's screaming, like, you know what I mean? It's just like it's very blah.
There's 2 things he could have did to blow me away at the end of this book, even though I didn't reach it. But if I did reach it, there's 2 things he could have did. 1, he could have had the kid rape the judge, the old elderly judge. I would have been like, oh shit, revenge, finally. Or 2, he could have just been like, everyone lived happily ever after. I'm like, oh my god, this is amazing now.
Wait, what?
We had this whole book, and actually it's a happy book. I wouldn't have believed they got married and had 10 kids. And they all lived on a ranch. What unbelievable! And they all look like Clint Eastwood. Amazing. But no, it was not great. So anyway, folks, if you enjoyed, we will talk about the other stuff off the air. You know why? Because this is too long for me to edit already. If you folks want to check out this book, this podcast was supposed to be Book of the Month for October, which it is, but it's not going to be out until Tuesday, which means it's after Halloween, and it's technically November. So sorry about your luck, but there are plenty of stories on our website from the last month, Halloween themed, from our open submissions we had. And
Halloween.
If you guys want to ever get pissed off about life, I got 20 story submissions in the last 2 days. What's today's date? It is the 28th. I have everything scheduled for the end of this, this month. Why do you wait till the end of the month to submit?
Well, and then last week...
think you're going to get, be published on a, Saturday I'm going to publish 10 stories?
Well, also on Saturday, or like last week, you already put out that we already closed submissions.
I did,
Yeah.
but not everybody follows us on. I didn't put it on the website, which might have been a mistake. But I did put it on social media, which apparently those people don't follow. But yes, but I'm like 20 submission. So now I'm thinking like, because what always happens is the best stories come fucking last.
At the end,
So I'm like, maybe I'll fucking read some of these, and if I see their quality, I'm like, hey, obviously Halloween's over.
Yeah.
Maybe for October, or for November. But anyway, folks, if you want to check out all these submissions we've been getting and been publishing, go to drunkenpenwriting.com. You can follow us on the old Twitter at drunkpenwriting, Instagram and Facebook, Drunken Pen Writing. I need to learn how to do, I was trying to figure this out on my phone because Earread does this. He puts like a picture from whatever he uses as picture for the podcast, like whatever that episode is, like Sylvia Plath, I think he had.
Man.
So he had a picture up on his stories and then like an accompanying audio, like a clip from the, I don't know how to do that. I've been trying to figure it out, and I was like, I can make a reel, but I don't want to make a reel of it, Who's going to watch that? So I'll have to figure that out. But anyway, folks, thank you for listening. Thank you, Ash, for joining us on this eclectic episode. That's not the right
Well,
word.
thank you for having me, Caleb.
Yeah, you got to do your Alex Jones real quick. Alex Jones, what does he think of Blood Meridian? What does Alex Jones think of Blood Meridian?
Well, Caleb, coming into this book, I'm a little retarded, so I didn't really get this at all.
But I loved it.
You almost sounded more wrestler there.
Man, feel the pain.
Feel the pain, brother.
Feel the pain, brother.
So anyway,
Bye.
thank you for listening, and keep smiling.
And thou hast been cast out of paradise and must piss upon volcanic dirt, creating gunpowder for Remington and all the other brands of rifles. Forever. Amen.